Friday, January 17th. If you're listening to this, when you're listening to this, this is the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night Podcast. Chase, did you know I was on Twitter earlier today? 9 years ago today was perhaps the best Sunday Night Football on NBC game, if you know what I'm talking about.
9 years ago today, that would be 2016?
2016. This was a playoff game.
Yep. Talking about the hold on. This is a play.
Yes.
Yeah. The Packers and Cardinals.
That was okay. There are different kinds of games when it comes to the playoffs.
Yep.
That game, and why that game was so great is think about the haymakers that were thrown at the end of that game. Literally thrown.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, what Aaron Rodgers was able to do on a 4th and 20 something in his end zone was ridiculous, and then throw pretty much a no-look Hail Mary to Jeff Janis. I mean, one of the
falling backwards, spinning around, not even looking, and Al and Chris having one of my favorite calls they've ever had in that end. Stop it, please. And then the coin that didn't flip to start overtime, to which Collinsworth said that he'd seen pizzas flip more than that, which I don't doubt.
Yeah.
And then Larry Fitzgerald,
take over.
One of the great postseason performers who began his 2008 run on NBC.
It's Falcons.
If you ever listened to that conjures up this name, Tom Hammond.
Oh my, that takes me back, man. Tom Hammond and Chris Collinsworth were on that call.
Yes,
for that game.
For Collinsworth, because that was Madden's last year. We're going way back.
We really are.
Tiki Barber was the sideline reporter for that game.
Oh my gosh!
Also in Arizona. Arizona's had a lot of good Sunday Night Football on NBC playoff games. Heck, they had a great Super Bowl. 10-year anniversary coming up February 1st. Anyway, I'm Alex Frank. You can refer to me as Frankie, my stage name. Chase Younts, my co-host. He's on Twitter at YountsChase32. I'm on Twitter at Frankie_Natty. Chase, also the host of the Cut to the Chase podcast. Chase, I got to be honest. Divisional playoff weekend. Maybe the best weekend overall, Saturday, Sunday of the NFL season.
Yeah, and it really... Don't get me wrong, wild card weekend is great and everything, but for the most part, more of the time who's going to win. But then, hence the name wild card. You get a game like the Commanders Bucks, and a team gets upset here or there. It happens. There's years where all of the underdogs win. But when you get to the divisional round, it truly is. It's the hottest teams in the league. Sometimes it's the best teams in the conference. And you really start to see which teams were built for this, who starts to separate, who really has to fill more holes when the offseason comes. But there are some great divisional round games. And I'll tell you that 2021 divisional round, every single game was a banger. And that's a tough one to top. But we've got 4 very good football games this weekend. I'm excited to see all of them.
I'm excited too. And you mentioned 2021. I was listening to an old show, Greeny's show on ESPN Radio. Mm-hmm. And then, by the way, ESPN Radio is changing their lineup the Monday after the Super Bowl. Sadly, Greeny's show will no longer be airing, but Greeny's got a lot going on.
He does.
As it is. And I'm sure Hembo, his co-host, Paul Hembakitis, he's going to still have a prominent role at ESPN. Still sad that show's going off the air. But anyway, I was listening to the show they did the Monday after the Bills-Chiefs playoff game, which, I mean, everybody knows when you say Bills-Chiefs playoff game, even though they've played multiple ones, the one.
Oh, yeah.
Which was 2021. And it's so funny because Greeny said after the first 3 games, he's like, gosh, I feel sorry for Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. How are they going to top this? They did.
It's crazy. It's insane.
It is
insane.
Listen, that weekend, I was at the game in Nashville, with the Bengals game in Nashville, awesome. Which, I mean, that was the 4th best game of the weekend, which was still a tremendous game.
Yeah.
Niners Packers. I mean, look, that was a little low scoring, not a whole lot of action throughout the game, but the ending was dramatic.
Yeah.
Rams Buccaneers. I'll never forget I was driving back from Nashville with my cousin back to Ohio State, and I listened to that whole game on Westwood One Radio. The great Dave Pash, I'm sure you know. You listen to a lot of Dave Pash, you being the sportscasting geek that you are.
Correct.
He called that game with Mike Golick and Ross Tucker. And I'll never forget when Cam Akers fumbled. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Of course this is happening.
Yep.
It's funny, my sister texted me during that game. She's like, gosh, Brady's looking terrible today. I'm like, don't say that.
Don't
text me that one is 27-3. Or may have been 27-13, but I'm like, don't say that.
He's waking up. He'll wake up, and he did. He definitely did.
Clearly didn't learn her lesson when it was 28-3 on February 5th, 2017. That's a discussion for a whole other day. Anyway, that whole weekend was just – and then, like, Bills Chiefs you knew was going to be great, and I think all week we knew it was. Everybody said it was going to be. Yeah. And as I listened to that first half of the game on radio, and I'm like, this game has everything.
Little yeah, I mean, it was unreal. I mean, the Gabe Davis legacy game that wasn't really much of a legacy game considering that they lost, but I mean, he's 8 for 201, 4 touchdowns, and then the infamous 13 seconds. I mean,
13 seconds.
Not even all 13 seconds, actually.
No. The amazing thing about that is, to me, is how the Chiefs managed to have enough timeouts for that situation.
You know, some things work in mysterious ways, and that was one of those situations, and it created a new playoff overtime rule because the Bills didn't get the ball. And
crazy thing is, I wanted the Chiefs to win that game because I wanted the Bengals to play the Chiefs.
I agree. I agree on that
because I said, no way are they going to Buffalo and winning in Buffalo.
And it's funny how that happened a year later, but
with 3 backup offensive linemen.
Nonetheless, Bengals talk, SNF talk, just down the we could go on so many tangents with that.
Chase the Dream. Isn't your name Chase?
On Sundays.
Wow.
I think we're on to something.
What else do we need? Applebee's? Okay.
Sure.
I could go for a bacon burger right now. Speaking of which, Sunday Night Football on NBC. Chase is the final broadcast of the year for Sunday Night Football on NBC.
Yeah, I mean it. And think about it: the final broadcast is your second year in a row where it's going to be a 3:00 game in the NFC, and we've got a really good one with the Rams and the Eagles. You know, the Rams are finding their offense, and the Eagles have been great all season long. So this should be a fun one.
It will be. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth, Melissa Stark with the call. Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. First broadcast of the year from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
For Sunday Night Football on NBC. If you can believe that.
That's insane to think.
They had a scheduled one in week 9.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if Saquon Barkley's backwards hurdle had been on Sunday Night Football?
Oh, my gosh. It was going to be against Doug Peterson and the Eagles.
Yeah.
From the former Eagles coach. But, man, because that game got moved to 4:05, that would have been incredible if that.
This is why flex scheduling needs to be outlawed.
We could have a conversation on that another time because I think we have a little different.
All right, write that down for the off-season shows.
Yes, we're gonna have a lot of all-season content. But man, if that would have been on SNF again with the Kelly Green jerseys and everything else, would have been great. Would have been great.
You know what else we're going to discuss is the NFL adapting its uniform policies to where you can wear whatever uniforms you want in the playoffs. Because can you imagine Kelly Green jerseys in the playoffs on Sunday, which, by the way, now it looks like it's going to be a wintry mix on Sunday in Philadelphia at a high of like 34 or 41, something like that. So, yeah, this is going to be fun. Speaking of Applebee's, it sponsors Football Night in America, which kicks off NBC's coverage at 2 Eastern on Sunday. Westwood One's coverage, Chase, you'll like this, Ian Eagle and Charles Davis, alongside Ben Lieber, who is normally the sideline reporter for the Minnesota Vikings radio network, alongside the great Paul Allen. So
there you go. I actually just talked to Ian yesterday, and I texted him, and he was like, "Yep, calling the game on Westwood Sunday," and he said, "Doing with Charles Davis." I'm like, "Yeah, it's almost like you guys do games together already." Oh wait,
they are so underrated.
They are.
Charles Davis is a tremendous analyst.
He is. He definitely is.
I really like him. And I know you're a huge Ian Eagle fan and Noah Eagle fan. I mean, man, do we? I mean, Okay, so this game between the Rams and the Eagles, they met on Sunday Night Football in the regular season. It was Week 12. The Eagles won 37-20. Saquon Barkley was ridiculous that night. 26 carries, 255, 2 touchdowns. He had a 70 and 72 yarders in the second half.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, needless to say, the Eagles ran away with that game. But the Rams have been very good since then.
They have.
Winners of 6 of their last 7 games, and the only game they lost, they didn't even play their starters.
Yeah. I mean, this was the last game that they lost, like you mentioned, and until that Seahawks game. But I mean, you go back and look at the numbers, like Stafford played pretty well. He was about 240, 2 touchdowns, completed two out of every 3 passes. Puka Nacua had 9 for 117. The Rams have been playing some really good football as of late. It's just the big problem with that game was that Matthew Stafford was sacked 5 times. They couldn't really get a consistent run game going. I know Kyron Williams at 72 yards, averaged 4.5 a carry, but it was just they couldn't get a consistent run game going, and they just kept getting sacked. And then on the flip side of the ball, again, like you mentioned, Saquon Barkley went for 255 and 2 touchdowns on 26 carries. I mean, how are you going to – what are you going to do? It's a boat race out there. And then – not to mention A.J. Brown going for 6 for 109 and everything else. And that was in a game where Devonta Smith didn't play. He was hurt. So
I wonder why he didn't have a catch, because I was looking through the box score this morning. I saw he didn't have a catch. I was like, wow, that's impressive. I forgot he did not play that game.
Yeah, and that was one of the only games he didn't play this year. But it was just like, the Eagles, they really took it. They ran away with the show quite literally. And it's crazy to say, if the Rams could try to box Saquon, box him into like a 125 type of game, that they'd have a chance.
Yeah.
Because you saw, they lost by 17. It was a 10-point game in the third quarter. The Rams had the lead in the first quarter, everything else. It was a close game until the Eagles just really started to break the dam and run the football. And it started right out of the gate in the second half when Saquon took it the distance for a touchdown.
You're so right. And I'm going to read to you what Jordan Rodrigue, I'm not sure if you read her work in The Athletic. She covers the LA Rams. She's covered them for many years, including their Super Bowl year, which, we still obviously, needless to say, still have bad memories of. But this is what she said after this game when the Eagles ran right through the Rams. She said, "This simply is a team that can't currently hang with the big, physical, tough dude teams." Okay. That was fair to say then. Yeah. I'm not denying that. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody was denying that at the time. The Rams were 5-6 after this game. Since then, they beat the Bills 44-42. They beat the Vikings on Monday 27-9. And they also beat San Francisco 12-6. They beat Arizona 13-9. So they've won games in multiple ways. They've won shootouts, and they've won games where, it was the games were a slog. That Rams 49ers Thursday night game was hard to watch. Yeah. Even though it's an NFC West rivalry and the weather conditions were just horrible that night. Mm. I saw something from the Rams offense, Chase, Monday night, that I hadn't seen in what feels like since the Bills game in Week 14. Did you see what I'm referencing here?
I think so. Continue, though.
Okay. I saw an offense that was attacking early. I saw an offense that was aggressive. I saw an offense that was hitting shots down the field. I saw an offense that makes me think, if Stafford plays like this, and if he has Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua working the way they were, and if Kyron Williams gets going on the ground, and he doesn't have to rush for 255 like Saquon Barkley may have to for the Eagles for them to operate at their peak offensively. What I saw, though, in that game, our Monday night's game, was a Rams offense that can go into Philadelphia and I think match up with the Eagles.
Yeah.
I think, and by the way, their defense was tremendous on Monday night. Yes, the Vikings offensive line was awful, but you have to give the Rams defense. When you have 2 rookies on that D line, Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, those guys were getting after Sam Darnold.
They were. I mean, you're looking at this Rams team being revitalized ever since that Eagles game. And like you mentioned with the offense, they were aggressive. They were attacking. They were, the biggest thing, efficient. They were efficiently attacking the Vikings defense, who's known for blitzing, who's known for playing very aggressive and everything else. And Matthew Stafford just, playing with poise, but at the same time, he's a veteran. He's seen a lot of these defenses, able to get the ball out quick, but decisive and accurate, doing a really good job. And the big underrated thing about these Rams wide receivers like Puka Nacua, I almost get him and Cooper Kupp mixed up with the names, but the big thing about these guys is they can get out and block. They are really, really good blockers on the edge. You'll see screen passes thrown to Puka. You'll see the screens thrown to Cooper Kupp. And the other receiver is blocking really well, blocking 5-10 yards up the field, playing very physical, aggressive. These are guys that'll, catch in the slot. They'll play on the outside. They'll get physical with you. All world receivers, and the Rams have 2 of them. And then, like you mentioned with Kyren Williams, I mean, he has been very efficient and reliable in between the tackles. They run him in different ways. They run a lot of different schemes for him and everything else, but he's just a really well all-purpose back, and they're really going to have to rely on him without any more depth necessarily, with Blake Corum not being back there. They didn't really use him a whole lot, but still, Kyren Williams is, a big X factor in this game if they want to unlock this offense even more.
16 carries, 76 yards on Monday night, 4.8 yards per carry. And again, that's a stat line that can, the Rams can win with. Yeah. He doesn't have to rush like Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry on Sunday for the Rams to win. And it was a performance that reminded me why this Rams team is so good. And even though a lot of key players have come and gone since 2021, and I'm talking about guys like Andrew Whitworth on the offensive line and a whole bunch of other offensive linemen, and then especially on defense with Aaron Donald retiring last year, Jalen Ramsey, and then you think about other guys like Von Miller and Ernest Jones, and this defense is not what it was in 2021, but they're still very good. The Rams, this is the 3rd time in the last 4 years they've made the playoffs. And every time they've gone into the playoffs, they've gone in with momentum, a whole lot of momentum.
Oh, yeah.
And I firmly believe if they hadn't run into the Lions last year, because that was Detroit's night, and give the Rams credit for giving the Lions all they could handle. Stafford had, I think, 365 passing yards in that game. Puka Nacua had like 9 for 180 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was absurd that night. Actually, I think he only had 1 touchdown. Tutu Atwell had the other, excuse me.
Yep.
Anyway, if the Rams hadn't run into the Lions last year, I think they would have, if they had played Dallas, they would have beaten them because they could have run the football and they would have executed their play action off of it. Just like we talked about with Green Bay last year with Aaron Jones, and then that allowed Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave to just leak out into complete wide open areas. But you look at this year, winning 5 in a row to win the division, and then they won their wild card playoff game. 3 years ago, they won 5 in a row to win the division, and then look what they did in the playoffs. And it was this weekend where, they ran into Tom Brady, and the whole rule of thumb of don't bet against Brady in the playoffs. I did, and then Tampa Bay started to come back, and then Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford worked their magic.
Other plans.
Are you starting to think that this may be, a Rams team that
I think where you're going with this, I think the way that it happens is if Jalen Hurts isn't playing his A game.
Which he wasn't last week.
Not one bit. Not one bit.
So that leads me to this. How concerned are you about him and Philadelphia?
I am I don't think I'm concerned about Philadelphia, but at the same time, I'm concerned about him, and he's the quarterback. So it's like, yeah, there's a bit of a concern with, the Eagles overall. Jalen Hurts coming off the injury and everything, he's had a solid season passing the football. I'm not worried about him running the football. I'm not worried about his legs. Okay, we know Jalen Hurts is a true dual threat quarterback and everything else, but I'm just a little concerned when it comes to him throwing the football. Again, last week, he didn't look all that great. I know it was his first game back in, roughly a month. 13 for 21, 131, 2 touchdowns. And the first touchdown he had, again, great throw. But, he had like 9, 10, 11 months in the pocket. So he had all the time in the world. And then the other one, and I'm not faulting him for that, but then the other one, catch and run right there for Dallas Goedert. But, the Rams, they're not going to play the Eagles the same way they played the Vikings defensively, considering that, Sam Darnold's not Jalen Hurts, a dual threat quarterback, any of that nature. But don't be mistaken. The Rams are going to send pressure. They are going to try to get after Jalen Hurts. They're going to try to speed up his mental process and bottle him in and try to get home to the quarterback. So, Jalen Hurts is going to have a lot coming at him, and he's going to have to find a way to answer, get out of the pocket, and just find his old self when playing quarterback.
We thought that the Rams were the better matchup for Philly this weekend than the Vikings. I don't feel that way anymore. Because as you mentioned, the Rams' defensive front will send pressure.
Oh, yeah.
And to your point, if Barkley has the kind of game he had against Green Bay last week, this is going to be a game. Because one thing that Matthew Stafford will not do is give the game away. He will not give the game away.
Yeah.
And it's ever since the playoffs in 2021. If the Rams have lost a game, it's not because Matthew Stafford. It's because their defense was going through a transition period, which was clearly the case last year. And we saw that against teams like the Ravens when they beat the Rams in Week 14 on that punt return for a touchdown in overtime. We saw it in the playoffs last year. But the Rams' defense, since they gave up 42 points to the Bills in games where their starters have played, have given up 6, 9, 9, and 9 points. That, Chase, is saying something.
It is.
This is not a Rams defense that is going to be a pushover. And I will also say this. And I watched pregame. I watched Monday Night Countdown on Monday night. And all the tributes that they did for the first responders in Los Angeles. Once again, our absolute thoughts and prayers are with everybody out in the Los Angeles community. Easiest decision I made today, Chase, was when I was at Firehouse Subs. And they asked me if I wanted to round up the total of my order to donate to first responders. You don't even have to ask me that question. Absolutely. Exactly. With all that's going on, and really any time, for all the hard work that they do and literally putting their lives on the line for us. Just absolutely incredible work that they're doing. And resilient, bravery, courage, everything. Anyway, I saw a Rams team on Monday that was playing for the city of LA. You could tell they were playing for something bigger than just themselves. It reminded me of watching the Hollywood, what do they call that game, 54-51 years ago, the Hollywood shootout against
There's many names, yes.
One of the best Monday Night Football games ever. Joe Tessitore called that game.
Greatest one,
with Booger McFarland and Jason Witten.
Man.
That was a fantastic game. I saw something similar to that on Monday night. By the way, Rachel Platten was incredible with her performance of Fight Song before the game. This Rams team is playing with a connectedness to him. And that's a tribute to the culture, a testament to the culture that McVay has built. They had the disastrous 2022 season. But man, they have bounced back from that beautifully. Draft picks, free agent signings, everything. And now they're going into Philadelphia, even though they're on a short week. They're playing for something bigger than themselves here. And for me, I think about Philadelphia and how concerned I am after last week. You mentioned that you're not concerned about the team, and that's fair. Their defense is playing extremely well. Like, their defense might be the best defense in the NFL.
Yep.
Losing to Kobe Dean,
yeah.
when you lose like that, I was saying to myself last week, they just lost one of their arteries. Like, the heart of the Eagles' defense is their linebacking core.
Yeah.
With Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond and Nolan Smith. When you lose one of those, that is going to change everybody's roles. And I'm telling you, the pressure that is on them to win this game at home, that is going to be a raucous crowd on Sunday afternoon. I mean, I was listening to Chris Sims Unbuttoned, an NBC Sports podcast, which is really good. And he was saying he cannot wait to be in Philadelphia for this game on Sunday afternoon. But let me ask you this question.
Okay.
If the Eagles lose this game at home to a team that that theoretically they should beat, and I think before Monday night I would have told you they will beat. If they lose this game, does that warrant Nick Sirianni to be, fired?
You always bring the fun questions to the board.
The obvious questions too. I try to make them
the
original.
obvious. The stadium, the city of Philadelphia will be calling for his head. They would call for his head.
It's not the first time they will.
Not the first. Yes, definitely not the first time. But man, I mean, if they lose this game, you're going to be like, man, you have a 2,000-yard rusher. You have two great receivers on the outside. Jalen Hurts is back. Arguably one of the best defenses in the National Football League. And you lost to a team that you beat by 17 on the road, who at one point was 5-6.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Eagles fans are going to look at this one.
Yep.
If the Eagles end up losing, and it's not going to be pretty. It won't be. And you know what? I'll go on a limb and say if the Eagles do lose this game, that Nick Sirianni, I think, is going to be fired.
I mean, if what happened last year, and he wasn't, and I was someone that was indifferent on that opinion last year because he went to the Super Bowl the year before, and collapses happen. They do. And to his credit, they changed coordinators on both sides of the ball, which was desperately.
They change them every year. That's the thing.
The year before was because Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen.
Yeah, I mean, he had them for 2 years. He had those guys for 2 years.
But I mean, they promoted from within. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
Sean Desai, their defensive coordinator, I think that was a promotion from within too. That was disastrous. And then they had Matt Patricia, whatever they were doing there. That was that didn't work. Yeah. Just go get Vic Fangio. He'll fix everything. And he has, to his credit. And Kellen Moore's done a great job with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. And the Eagles, to their credit, have figured out we're a run-first team. If we run the ball more than we throw, we're going to win games. They have. They've won 15 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, you would lose to a team from Los Angeles who had to play their home playoff game in Arizona.
Yep.
And is on a short week coming cross-country to your stadium where you are undefeated at home in the divisional round in your franchise history.
Mm-hmm.
And the weather's going to be your kind of weather. It's built for you to win a game like this. I mean, the knock on McVay early in his career was he can't win games in the cold. They can't win games that are rock fights. They can't win games that are low scoring. And it's funny, I was listening to Hembo, Greeny's co-host. They were talking about after Bills Chiefs in 21, they were talking about the worst loss you've experienced as a sports fan. And that's another topic for our offseason show.
Yeah.
Hembo said the 2002 NFC Championship game between the Buccaneers and the Eagles, and that was the last game at the old Veterans Stadium.
Yep.
You lose this game on Sunday to a warm weather team from LA that's coming in on a short week. And here's the other thing. You rested your starters, even though Saquon Barkley was within absolute striking distance of breaking the single-season rushing yards record.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you rest your starters? For a run in the playoffs. And you come up short and don't even get to the NFC Championship game. And losing at home to a team that has 4 fewer wins than you. After what happened last year and all that you did this season to build this team back into a Super Bowl contender and you lose in the divisional round at home. Changes will be made.
He's getting fired at that rate.
Because you know Jeffrey Lurie is going to make changes.
They changed out coordinators, remember? They changed out coordinators going into this season because there was heat for Nick Sirianni. There was heat.
Yes,
but he go out and get 2 great ones.
Nick Sirianni, aside from let me rephrase that. Nick Sirianni already this season, they lost a home game to Atlanta. They never should have lost that game. And then he was chirping with fans against the Browns. And even though the Eagles have won a lot of games since then, Eagles fans don't forget.
They do not.
Eagles fans are a very different breed.
Eagles and I actually beat up Santa. For that. They beat up Santa once before. They are different.
Yeah, exactly. There's a jail inside the stadium.
It's different.
There is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been to Lincoln Financial Field? Have you been to a game there?
No, and I don't plan on it.
So I went to a Bearcats game against Temple there. And I actually do want to go to an Eagles game just to experience it. Okay. But they literally handed me a water without the cap on. And I'm like, why is there not a cap on it? And they say, well, if it gets thrown onto the field, then, no harm, no foul. I'm like, oh, I'm in Philly now.
It's always sunny in Philadelphia. There you go.
It may not be on Sunday night around 6:30. Okay, with that said, we've spent almost 30 minutes on Rams-Eagles, which tells you how great this weekend's going to be. Yep. Time for our game picks. Rams-Eagles, final Sunday Night Football on NBC broadcast before their 20th season, which is a big reason why we're doing this podcast next year. Chase, who you got on Sunday?
I really want to go with the hot pick on the Rams, but I'm going to pick the Eagles. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Not super low. The over-under is 43.5, but I'm going to go on ahead and say the Eagles win this game. I'm going to go 24-19.
24-19. All right. I was driving today, Chase, and I was listening to, some 80s rock.
Okay.
The Eagles have a great hotel story.
Is that right?
Do you know what state that hotel story takes place in?
In what state?
California.
Oh, is that so?
It is so. I'm smelling something. Just like the warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. Chase Younts, I'm smelling upset here. Give me the LA Rams 23-20. Joshua Carty Party 38-yard field goal for the win. Rams advance to the NFC Championship game. Upset pick of the week. Let's go.
Call the shot. I love it. I love it. Love it.
This is going to be a rock fight, though. It's going to be an absolute battle.
No doubt about it.
And I'm picking LA to upset Philly. 23-20. All right. There's another game on Sunday.
Tell me about it.
Have you not been told about it? As you see on your screen.
Be proud.
It's the Ravens and the Bills. 6:30 Eastern on CBS. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson, Jay Feely, Gene Steratore with the call. Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. NFL Today kicks off CBS's coverage at 6 Eastern. Westwood One's coverage, Ryan Radke, Mike Golick, and I don't know why I'm blanking here. I better confirm this. This is big time now. Ryan Radke, Mike Golick, and Derek Rackley. I knew that. With the call on Westwood One following the Rams and Eagles. By the way, pregame for Rams Eagles for Westwood One, 2:30 with Scott Graham in the studio. He'll also be in studio for the Ravens and the Bills. Okay, so this is the most anticipated playoff game since 2021 Bills Chiefs.
In the same round, too.
I posed this on the show earlier this week. This has a game of the decade caliber feel to it.
Yeah.
If it does, why is it that way?
It's the two guys that are playing for MVP are going at it, and we know how electrifying and otherworldly they are. But after Sunday, it could be to a heightened sense, which is unbelievable to think about.
The stakes of this game for both, and by the way, the winner of this game is probably going to Kansas City. So survive this game. Have another game the exact same time next week.
Yeah.
In Kansas City. By the way, the weather for this game looks miserable. It is
Why you're on the ball.
Like a high of 22, I think. And by the way, this game's at night, so it's going to be around like 20 degrees, snow. I saw someone on Twitter, Dove Kleiman, said it was going to be like -3 for a wind chill.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this is football at its finest. Playoff football in Buffalo on a Sunday night. What could go wrong?
There you go.
Anyway, the stakes for this game for the winner is if it's Jackson, he's winning MVP.
Yeah.
I don't think we're denying that. But if Allen wins this game, we're talking about maybe this is the Bills' year. But whoever loses this game, if the Ravens lose this game, it's if not this year, when with Lamar Jackson. And for the Bills, it's are they cursed? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like this is a legacy-defining game. And it's not potentially one. It is one.
Oh, it is.
I think that's what's so big about this game. The fact that you have a two-time MVP who was given the best running back for my money's worth of the 21st century this offseason. And to their credit, they've been really good. And then you have another quarterback who has, I believe, should have won MVP last year and may win it this year, who lost his top two receivers this season, but has shown that that clearly has not fazed him. And this is the best, most balanced team he's had. But if he loses at home for a third straight year in the divisional round of the playoffs, what does that say about him?
Yeah, I mean, this is, the stakes are so high, and it's such a unique situation as to the fact of, I like how you pose both questions for these teams where you're looking at, okay, for the Ravens, if not now, when? Because it's not every day that you get the best, arguably the best running back in football on your team with the best dual threat quarterback in football. With a two-time, it's not every day that happens. And they hit stride. It's not every day that this happens.
That's a great way to say it.
And then, again, like the flip side with the Bills, you can't go 3 years in a row against three different teams, against the other three. They talk about the big four quarterbacks in football
exactly.
With Mahomes and Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. You got Josh Allen. You cannot lose 3 straight home divisional playoff games to Burrow, Mahomes, and Allen. You can't.
Yeah.
Can't.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can't. I mean, to Lamar Jackson, because then you'd be against Lamar Jackson? You'd be 1-1 in the playoffs against him. You're already 0-1 against Burrow. You're you're 0-3 against Mahomes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's okay. So if you lose this game, you're what 1-6 against them?
Yeah, I won. Or 1-5.
1-5. Okay, 1-5.
Same thing.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, you're right. Same thing. Because he's 1-0 against Jackson. Okay. You're exactly right. That's a great way to frame this. Because we hear all the time how great Josh Allen's numbers are in the playoffs. And believe me, they're great.
Yeah.
I mean, his playoff run in 2021 was absurd.
Insane.
Not just as a passer, but as a runner. People remember the Bills-Chiefs game. So when we were celebrating the Bengals breaking the 31-year curse, there was another game that night. The Bills essentially ended anything that was still associated with the Patriots and maybe dynasty that night. 47-17. 7 possessions, 7 touchdowns. Perfect on third down. Josh Allen had threw for 5 touchdowns that night. I mean, it was a brilliant quarterbacking performance. Then the next week, he throws for 4 touchdowns and throws for 300-plus yards. Walked off the field with a lead. And yet lost. And we all said, okay, this isn't on Josh Allen. Well, then next year happened against the Bengals. And then last year happened against the Chiefs. And now this year the Bills said, okay, well, we're going to build our team to be more multidimensional. We're going to trade away Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. That was addition by subtraction. Maybe not so with Gabe Davis. I always thought Gabe Davis was really good. And so is Diggs. He was also a headache. And you could clearly see it impacted Josh Allen.
Oh, yeah.
Look how much freely he's played this year. By the way, the Bills' defense, which lost 3 members of their secondary last year, and look what they've done this year. Did I mention Matt Milano missed the first, 12 games of the season?
Yeah.
So, if you can't win this year, when you're playing a quarterback who, as electrifying as he is, has yet to prove himself in the playoffs, and you can't win on your home turf in the divisional round for 3 straight. It's one thing if you have 1 game at home and then 2 on the road or whatever. If all 3 weren't at home, basically. Isn't Buffalo supposed to be a distinct home field advantage in the playoffs?
You think?
And you're gonna lose 3 straight years at home. The pressure is on the Bills in this game, but it's also on Lamar Jackson. This is why the NFL is the best sport there is. Not just the games itself, the legacies that are at stake. The quarterback is the most coveted, scrutinized position in American sports.
Yep.
It is a legacy-defining position. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen more than likely will both end up in Canton one day. I'm comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
But whoever loses this game, it's an off-season that you are going to think about this game especially if it ends in a dramatic way, which I believe it will. It's I'm told you remember your worst loss more than your best win. That might be the case here.
One way or another. That's always how it goes.
Let me ask you this. If the Bills win this game, does that kind of overshadow the 42-36 game from 3 years ago?
No.
For Josh Allen? No. Okay,
no, because we still have to go into Kansas City and win that game the following week. You would assume it would be Kansas City.
But what if he wins and then we know they're playing Houston
he's got to get to a Super Bowl to overshadow that game.
Fair.
In my opinion, it's either he's got to get to a Super Bowl or he's got to go back to KC and win. It could have to be both.
Well, you may get both of those opportunities in one game next Sunday in the AFC Championship game. So, Chase, I think the Bills can beat the Ravens at their own game in this matchup.
I believe so.
Here's why. James Cook is the best running back in football that no one talks about.
He offsets. He's that extra dimension that Joe Brady's been able to add to this offense.
Yeah. And
it's allowed Josh Allen to not have to go on superhero cape so much.
He reminds me so much of what Clyde Edwards-Helaire did at LSU in 2019.
100%.
And I say that, he had 16 touchdowns during the regular season, 16 rushing touchdowns. That was either co-lead or tri-lead with Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs. And those are 2 big names in terms of running backs in the NFL. But when I look at this game, and first off, this is another Sunday Night Football rematch. This was week 4. Baltimore absolutely thrashed the Bills that game.
Yeah.
35-10. Derrick Henry took the first play from scrimmage for the Ravens, 87 yards, and it was game on from that point.
Yeah.
But the Bills were still in the game in the third quarter. The Bills were still in that game 21-10, and then Joe Brady pulls out this trick play We all know what happened then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If Buffalo can run the football and keep their defense off the field and keep the Ravens off the field too, that is going to be very complimentary football in this case. If you can win time of possession, if you can win the running game, or at least not, I mean, do you want to know the rushing totals from that Week 4 game? Because it is completely one-sided.
No,
okay.
No surprise.
Okay, yeah, it's as bad as you think it is. Okay, so we look at that Week 4 game, and I have a quote. I'm going to try and find what Josh Allen had to say after that game. So it might be in here actually. Is it in here? Let me see if I can. Anyway, I'll find that quote by Josh Allen. But anyway, the rushing totals in that game were as follows. The Ravens had, oh, come on. That's not letting me. Okay. The Ravens in that game, Derrick Henry, by the way, had 199 rushing yards that night. The Ravens as a team, 271 rushing yards. You know how many the Bills had that game?
40.
You're actually pretty far off. They had 81.
Oh.
But again, same point.
Yeah.
I think the Bills have learned their lesson from that game. The Bills are a much better team than they were. Remember, the Bills were 3-0 at that point. They were kind of feeling themselves. Ravens were 1-2. They were clearly desperate that night.
Yep.
And they showed it with their ability to run the football. If the Bills can run if they win the toss, I'm taking the ball.
Oh, yeah.
I'm taking the ball because I want to set the tone. I want to run straight at Roquan Smith. I want to get their linebackers. I want to, spread their defense out. I want to attack I want to attack them downfield against the secondary that's vulnerable, even though it's gotten a lot better this season. I want to go right at them. Let them know they're in Buffalo. They're not in Baltimore. We're not going to let the opposing team dictate how this game is going to go. We're here to play. And they can do that with their ability to run the football and play complementary football. If they win time of possession and at the very least make it closer than 271-81 on the ground, they can win this game. They can win this game. And if they can get to Derrick Henry early, that is going to not allow Lamar Jackson to do as much as he can do. Because remember last week, Derrick Henry he got going very early. Lamar Jackson was dancing all over the pocket and, making ridiculous plays. If you can contain Derrick Henry early, you don't allow Lamar Jackson to spread the field even more because of Derrick Henry getting going early. That's how I think the Bills can win this game. And to me, it's actually very simple.
Yeah.
If the Ravens lose this game, should they consider making a head coaching change?
They're not going to, I don't think. But usually head coaching and quarterback duos that don't win a Super Bowl outside of about their first 5 or 6 years together typically don't win going forward. So the track record would say you probably should, considering you have a guy like Lamar, but I just think that there's too much loyalty to John Harbaugh, so I don't think they will. But talk around Baltimore will continue and increase, in my opinion.
I think that's a very good answer there. Because the easy answer to that question is no. Because John Harbaugh is a tremendous head coach. Mm-hmm. Look at the success the Ravens have had. But, again, if they don't win this year, when will they?
Yeah.
You bring in Todd Monken. Lamar Jackson might win 2 MVPs with him in 2 years. You bring in Derrick Henry. What are you not doing that's causing you to slip up in the playoffs? What are you not doing? like John Harbaugh has a ring, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the year that, with the way you are playing, you can, and quite honestly, should get to the AFC Championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very, very interesting question. Okay, enough talk. Game pick for a very, very big game with legacies at stake on Sunday night in Buffalo.
Well, I think it opened as Buffalo -1, and now it's Ravens -1 on the road. Baltimore beat them the first time by 25. Over-under's 51.5. You know what? I think Lamar Jackson has some unfinished business with Buffalo back in the playoffs in 2020.
Mm.
And I think the Ravens are going to win this game.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the, wintry mix and everything. It'd be something very interesting. I'm going to go with an unorthodox 28-25. Baltimore.
You don't normally see that.
Don't normally see
The
it.
Ravens did win a 28-25 game earlier this year. It was at Dallas in week 3.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that Ravens-Bills game was a Sunday Night Football on NBC game. Taron Johnson with a pick 6. And Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals in that game.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, this is why the NFL playoffs get the ratings and the views they do for games like this. This is the kind of game you dream of playing. And you don't think about, you do, but you don't think about what's my legacy going to be after this game. By the way, Josh Allen said after that week 4 game, quote, "They whooped our butt," quote, referring to the Ravens. And they did. But I think Buffalo's a much different team than they were that night. And I believe they are a much different team this season than they were last year. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The way they played last week against Denver, when they fell behind 7-0, I was like, oh boy. But they didn't panic. They stayed committed to running the football with James Cook, which opened up the downfield shots for Josh Allen. And look at guys like Curtis Samuel and Matt Collins and Amari Cooper. Their receiving core is deep. It may not have a number 1 guy, but it's deep. And if James Cook gets going running the football, and I believe he will, the Bills are going to be versatile offensively. They're going to be multidimensional. I think this game is going to be extremely close. Very close. But I'm taking Buffalo 34-31 in an all-time classic of an NFL playoff game. Survive this game, and then you go to Kansas City next Sunday for the AFC Championship game. That is what you have at stake in this game. If you're Josh Allen, can you beat the reigning MVP and who many, according to their all-pro votes, view as the MVP this year, and then go beat, a quarterback who's won 3 Super Bowls already and has beaten you 3 times in the playoffs? And if you're Lamar Jackson, it's, can you beat your closest competitor in the MVP race, and then can you go beat your kryptonite, as you have said? Like, my gosh, there are legacies at stake in this game. I think you're.
I am muted. Now I'm unmuted.
Okay, let me ask you this question: if the Texans beat the Chiefs, does this game have a little less meaning when it comes to legacies being at stake because the Chiefs won't be waiting in the AFC Championship next Sunday?
I don't think it does, because the winner gets a home AFC Championship game, and that's something that you have to win. I think the stakes get even bigger.
Good answer. Speaking of Texans Chiefs,
like it.
That is the third game we're going to look at this week. It's the first game of the weekend on ESPN ABC 4:30 from Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, Laura Rutledge with the call from Arrowhead Stadium. Westwood One's coverage with Kevin Harlan, Ross Tucker, and Olivia Harlan-Decker getting underway at 4 Eastern with Scott Graham in the studio. So another Sunday Night Football on NBC rematch. This is from Week 16. It was a Saturday afternoon game, a 1 o'clock game. And I think what's interesting about this game, Chase, is this game on Saturday and the Week 16 game, that game was a 1-point game midway through the third quarter. Mm-hmm. Actually, early in the third quarter. And I still believe to this day that Tank Dell's injury affected the Texans the rest of the game. Do you concur with that belief?
Yeah, I agree. The Texans were, figuring things out in that third quarter. They had a couple of really good drives in the first half. Just, defensively, they couldn't really stop Mahomes and them, but they got things going in that third quarter, and just unfortunate how, it ended for Tank Dell and everything else, and just took the air out of the team. They missed the extra point right after that, and just stuff wasn't right for them. It really wasn't. But they know going back in that stadium, they played toe-to-toe with KC. They know they can go up against these guys. They just got to make a couple more plays and, defensively just step up and try to add some more pressure against Patrick Mahomes and get their hands on a couple of these footballs.
They know they can, to your point, play with the Chiefs. They were right there. Take away Stroud's 2 interceptions, and that game I think those interceptions led to 10 points. He threw a pick on the first drive of the game. Mm-hmm. Chiefs go down, score a touchdown. He threw a pick on the last drive of the first half. Chiefs go down, get 3. 10 points in an 8-point game. Those obviously add up.
Yep.
And those obviously are a difference. So Stroud is going to have to take care of the football. But when it comes to this game, between the Texans and Chiefs, when it comes to this game, and after watching the Texans last week, I saw a Texans team that was kind of like the team I saw earlier in the regular season. One that looked dynamic offensively, one that was getting after the quarterback, one that was forcing turnovers in their secondary that I think is underrated. Mm. And I said to myself, why can't they go into Kansas City and make this a game? Are the Chiefs that much better than the Texans? They shouldn't be viewed that way. Right?
I agree.
And I thought C.J. Stroud, what was impressive to me was no Stephon Diggs, no Tank Dell, no problem. Nico Collins, 7 catches over 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson makes the catch that turns the whole game around on that broken play on 3rd and 16. And then you look at guys like Cade Stover, former Ohio State Buckeye. You look at John Mechie III, great inspirational story he has. Mm-hmm. And then you look at, Joe Mixon. Now, one key thing is, Chase, I don't know if you saw this on the 6 o'clock edition of SportsCenter, Joe Mixon did not practice Thursday.
It's big.
That's huge. And maybe, and look, they could have held him out, to make sure he's fresh enough for the game. And that is, that's reasonable. But you don't have him for this game, you're in trouble.
Big time.
Everybody remembers, Burrow's heroics in that AFC Championship game the Bengals won. Joe Mixon had over 80 yards rushing that game.
Yeah, he was a big part of the whole playoff run.
He was. Okay, so the Chiefs' stars, and some of their starters played Week 18, but Mahomes, Kelsey, Jones, Chris Jones did not. Does that concern you? Because they have now not played in 24 days going into Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes hasn't thrown a football in a game since Christmas, so
feels like a lifetime ago.
It does feel like a lifetime ago. Practically, it was last calendar year. But, I mean, you're looking at this, the Chiefs have been in this situation before where they've rested guys before. They've, gotten up some slower starts. It's just they can't get too behind the 8 ball if they get behind a little bit. I feel like the Chiefs are going to come out. I feel like they're going to come out strong and crisp and everything else. I think those guys needed some rest for playing in a lot of those close games throughout the season. I think the Chiefs are going to be fine, but I wouldn't – it's not fine to kick your feet up and, lay your head back. We got this in the bag. No, this is a Texans team that they're going to want some revenge from about a month ago, and Kansas City is going to have to be on their guard, and they got to play their A game of football. But I think they're going to be back to playing crisp.
I give the Texans a lot of credit because after that game in Kansas City, where you clearly saw the effect that Tank Dell's injury had on them emotionally, and then 4 days later on Christmas, they get absolutely boat raced by the Ravens. I give them a lot of credit. They have bounced back very nicely since then. They got a lot of rest in between weeks 17 and 18. They went to Tennessee, played their starters for a little bit. They look good. They win up. They looked very good last week in the playoffs against the Chargers. So they're confident going into this game. And obviously you need that when you're going to try to slay the dragon of the AFC. But what happens, let's say the Texans get out to a 7-0 lead on their first drive. Does and let's say the Chiefs go 3 and out. Does the pressure start to mount a little bit? Because, Chase, now going for the three-peat, it ramps up 10 notches.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, the pressure is going to rise a little bit, considering that, you've had all this time off and, you don't come out and score any points on the first drive, get any movement. I mean, it doesn't matter who you're playing or anything else. It's the playoffs is the first thing. But how do you respond when you get punched in the mouth unexpectedly? That'll tell a lot about you. But if you get punched in the mouth unexpectedly, that kind of goes back to being prepared versus being unprepared. So if the Chiefs are prepared and they're like, we know that the Texans are going to come out punching, we got to come out with something too, then you're going to see a Chiefs team that, is playing inspired football and, has been there, done that before multiple times. So they're going to have to be on their A game, to say the least. They cannot slack in this portion of the playoffs. This is the final 8 teams in football. You can't be slack in those close games. Those quarterbacks are going to come out ready to play. You cannot fall behind the 8 ball.
Do you remember the last time these two teams played in the playoffs?
2019, actually.
Do you remember how big of a lead the Texans had in that game?
Oh, the Chiefs fell behind the 8 ball so much. They did. Oh, yeah. And they recovered, I will say.
24-0, Houston was up. And I was watching highlights of that game earlier today. I forgot just how bad the Chiefs were to start that game. Drop passes from Kelsey, drop passes from Sammy Watkins, drop passes everywhere. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did in the first, the first, quarter plus.
Yeah.
Barely plus. And then Mecole Hardman has a kickoff return for a touchdown. And then Mahomes hits Damian Williams for a touchdown. And then the Texans go for a fake punt and miss.
Yeah.
And everything that could have gone right for the Chiefs after that did. They scored 41 straight points. I've never seen a game flip completely like it did on that day. I would argue, Chase, that game is just as responsible for the dynasty that the Chiefs are currently in as any playoff game that they have played over the last 6 years. Fortune
turned that day.
Yes.
It turned dramatically that day.
Here's the thing. They still hadn't been to a Super Bowl since 1969 going into that game.
Yeah.
They were still coming off that loss to the Patriots in the AFC title game the year before. They were still, trying to, break through, if you will.
Yeah.
And they got the favorable road. Because they knew if they won that game, they would host the AFC Championship against the Titans, who weren't very good that year. Well, I shouldn't say they weren't very good. They won 2 playoff games and beat the Patriots. But they weren't the Ravens that year, who were 14-2. And they were behind 24-0 before you could blink.
They were behind in the AFC Championship game by 10 points to the Titans. The thing is, that Chiefs team could fall behind because they had all of the explosives, weaponry, and everything else. This Chiefs team's winning games, but they can't necessarily fall behind the chains or fall behind. They can't. This is a team that cannot do that. Obviously, when you have 15 on your side, anything can happen, but you don't want to entertain that. I'll tell you that.
No, you don't. Because I think this is a Texans team, as we saw last week. If they get a lead and they build on it, good night.
Yeah.
Never thought we'd say that going into the divisional weekend. All right, let's get to some game picks. Texans versus Chiefs. Chase, who you got?
I'm gonna take the Chiefs in this one. You're looking at all the other Vegas stuff, Chiefs by 8, 41.5, whatever. I think the Chiefs are going to be well rested. They're ready to go. I'm going to say they win this game 24-14. I do think in the first half, it's going to be, I think the Texans are going to go to a pretty good start, but I think the Chiefs slowly and progressively, they're going to make their way, and I think they're going to win by 10.
So this is the first game we're going to agree on who we think is going to win, because I'm also going to take the Chiefs. But I think it's going to be a little more scoring. I'm going to use the same score that I used in my game prediction for the Week 16 game. I'm going to say 26-23.
Okay.
Harrison Butker hits from 36 yards as time expires. And to your point about the Chiefs, falling behind early or not falling behind early, maybe that's what this team is also great at.
Yeah.
They don't fall behind early. Like when the Bengals played them in Week 2, the Bengals could have had that game stomped on their throats at halftime. It was 16-10.
Yep.
The Falcons could have stomped on their throats in Week 3 on Sunday Night Football. They didn't. Look at any other game this year. The Chargers were up 10-0, lost 17-10. Like, if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you have to knock them out.
Got to.
And the only team to have done that this season when their full team was playing was Buffalo. So that's the first game this week. Those are all 3 rematches of Sunday Night Football and NBC games. We got one more game to go. It's the only game this weekend that is not a rematch from the regular season, but it is going to be a good one. It's the Commanders and the Lions at Ford Field in Detroit. 8:15 on Fox. Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady. He went to college just a short distance away from Detroit.
Not too far.
He will be in the booth with Aaron Andrews and Tom Rinaldi down on the field. Westwood One's coverage getting underway following Texans Chiefs. That is with Kevin Kugler, Mike Mayock, and Laura Oakman. Fox's coverage starts at 7:30 with Fox NFL Special. Call it a Fox NFL Special with Kurt Menefee and the guys. Okay, so the Lions and the Commanders, I think, Chase, if you're a Lions fan, you should like this draw. I believe that. I know your brother's a Lions fan. Lions are my second team. I've adopted them. But I think of all the teams that you could play this weekend, you didn't get the Rams or the Vikings. You could have got, if the Packers had beaten the Eagles, that would be very interesting to see for a third time, because they played 2 great games earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
But you get Washington. I think that's a good draw for them. I really do. Do you agree with that?
I think it is, but the scary thing about these young teams that make the playoffs, they don't know what they don't know.
You're right.
And you've seen some teams make runs before, but I do think Detroit has enough to beat this Washington team, but it's gonna be everything. It's gonna be far from easy, to say the least. But I think they have enough to do it. Jaden Daniels is so dynamic. I mean, this guy has got a bit of Lamar Jackson in him. It is really scary for the rest of the league and fun for the people in Washington to see it. And I think I know he's a rookie, but he's in the game. I mean, there's always going to be a chance. I feel like we've said that a lot more for a lot of these quarterbacks because of how good they've been. There's been a handful and a couple more of quarterbacks that if they're in the game, there's always a chance. So, I think with how Washington plays the game, these are 2 of the teams that go for it the most on 4th down. I mean, they love to gamble, and they've paid out a lot. I know the MGM casino up there in Detroit's going to be buzzing. But I'll tell you, man, this is going to be a very fun game with, I think, a lot of explosion from both offenses. Commanders have been able to hit some big plays, extending plays. The off script has been really big for Jaden Daniels. if the Lions can really condense this pocket and truly get home and wrap up, tackle, just, you know what I'm saying? Finish the play when it's needed to be finished. Do not let Jaden Daniels extend plays with his legs. I think the Lions will have a good one.
I think they will, and I think you can trust Aaron Glenn with after what we saw them do against Minnesota, that defense of the Lions, which, I mean, they have been pushed to the absolute. I mean, they've bent as far as you could bend in terms of injuries. How you know you have a great franchise quarterback in his rookie season or in his second season? I say in his second season because we know this with Joe Burrow in his second season. Mm-hmm. You know you have a great franchise quarterback if he gives you a puncher's chance every single game.
Yep.
Aside from week 1 against the Buccaneers, Jaden Daniels, throughout the rest of the regular season, never lost a game by more than 1 score.
Wow.
Okay? Go back and watch highlights of any key game they played in this season. The Philly game, the first time around. The Commanders had a 10-6 lead in the fourth quarter of that game. I mean, the Eagles were giving them chance after chance after chance to, win the game. And then, look at the Cowboys game the first time around. They should have lost that game by double digits. That throw to Terry McLaurin before the missed extra point, that's a stone's throw right there.
Man.
That takes stones to do what Jaden Daniels did. This kid does not get faced by anything. That's also how you know, hey, you have a great rookie quarterback. But he gives you a puncher's chance in every game. The Lions are, I think, a much better team than the Commanders are. And I say that because they're experienced. They're better in terms of talent. There are great players on every position on this Lions team. But the fact that the Lions have not played the Commanders this season just kind of create that unfamiliar element. And for as great of a defensive coordinator as Aaron Glenn is, he's getting interviews for head coaching jobs. Not because he's a great coordinator, but also because he's a great leader. He's a leader of men. You can clearly see that. But Jaden Daniels, having not faced him yet, let's say the Commanders' offense gets going early. And this Lions team is supposed to be the team that takes Detroit to the Super Bowl for the first time in franchise history. How do you take a crowd out of a game early, Chase? You run the football.
Yep.
The Commanders can do that.
With multiple people.
That is true. Very true. Okay, I don't think we need to waste any time. Game pick, the Lions hosting the Commanders.
I'm going to go Detroit in this one. It says Detroit by -9.5. I think Washington covers. 55.5 is the total. I'm going to go over. I'm going to say Detroit wins this one 31-24.
Okay. I agree with you. I'm going to pick the Lions. I think a lot of points are going to be scored in this game. The Lions offense is so good. It is just ridiculously good. And don't underestimate Jared Goff's mobility.
Mm-hmm.
He has some mobility. But getting David Montgomery back is crucial for this team. For as great as Jahmyr Gibbs, who's my favorite player on the Lions, for as great as Jahmyr Gibbs has been down the stretch in the regular season, getting Montgomery back is huge because now you can rotate them in and you keep a defense guessing. And then you add in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who quietly had 115 catches this year. And then you have Sam Laporta. And then you have Jamison Williams and what he can do. And I will guarantee you Ben Johnson's going to have something. Johnson's going to have something.
He's been cooking.
I don't know what it's going to be. He's going to have something. Just watch. And I think it might be early. I think it's going to be at least in the first half. I'm going to take the Lions 38-28. I think a lot of points are going to be scored in this game. I think the Lions defense is going to feel the Commanders out in the first half. But when the game is hanging in the balance from middle of the second quarter to midway through the fourth quarter, that's where the Lions are going to pull away. The Commanders might score a touchdown late to make things interesting, but I think the Lions are going to win this game 38-28. Now, Chase, on the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night podcast, he's Chase Younts at YountsChase32 on Twitter. Alex Frank, otherwise or sometimes referred to by my stage name, Frankie, at Frankie_Natty on Twitter. Chase, let me ask you this question. Can you imagine a Rams-Lions NFC Championship game?
All I'll say is get me in a movie theater, buttered popcorn, a big screen, because I'm ready to watch this cinematic masterpiece.
As if playing on Sunday Night Football on NBC last year on Wild Card Weekend wasn't enough. For the Lions to break their 32-year drought. As if playing on Week 1 Sunday Night Football in a great overtime game that Colin Cowherd said the next day could be a preview of the NFC Championship game. As if that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Like, apparently, Mike Mulvihill and Richie Zions and Rupert Murdoch and all the executives at Fox said, can we get that on January 26th at 3 o'clock? And here's the thing. Those two teams, Chase, and you know this, and your brother knows this.
Yeah.
Those two teams in recent history are so intertwined with one another.
It's crazy.
It's almost crazy to think about.
It's Freaky Friday. I'll tell you that.
Freaky Friday indeed. By the way, when you're listening to this on Friday, January 17th, Betty White's birthday is today. So God rest her soul. Happy birthday to Betty White. I mean, can you imagine the Lions playing at home in the NFC Championship are going to again have to be Matthew Stafford and the Rams?
Box office hit.
Some things you just cannot make up. If Packers-Eagles got 35 million views last week, which they did, that NFC Championship game might get, and I'm not kidding, 60 million.
Oscars being awarded.
Oh, Golden Globes. So those already happened.
Do it again.
Do it again. Yeah. You can. Nikki Glaser won't mind doing the opening monologue again. Come on.
Yeah, one more time.
Exactly. Okay. So, I mean, and here's the thing. Like, the Rams have been in this position before, playing in the 4-2 game when it happens Sunday at 3 o'clock on the East Coast after playing on Monday night of Super Wildcard Weekend. They beat the Bucs 3 years ago, and now they could beat the Eagles. You could set up that would just be, if you get Rams, Lions, and then Bills, Chiefs, talk about legacies at stake. I mean, man. All right.
Got great football this weekend.
We have tremendous football this weekend. But, Chase, it doesn't end. Sunday at, 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Doesn't end then. Because we got Monday night again.
We do. Different way.
Different way. MLK Day. The College Football Playoff National Championship presented by AT&T. We've got 8th-ranked Ohio State, Chase, your Buckeyes, against the 7th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I grew up a Notre Dame fan, but my life's experiences have changed that. So, still root for them. I still root for them. I still support them, but
yep.
I am a Buckeye State resident. I understand where I come from, Chase. Okay.
There you go. That's all you
need. Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, Holly Rowe, Molly McGrath with the call on ESPN and however many networks and alternate casts and mega casts and this and that that they have. I tell you, they have blown that up.
It's a lot.
It is. It's ridiculous.
I actually just dropped a preview of the championship game for Monday night. Me and my good friend, co-host of Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast, Brady King, we just dropped one.
Yes.
That released about 5 o'clock this afternoon. Well, yesterday being the day, but yeah,
check that out.
Yeah, definitely did a one on that one and did a deep dive on there.
Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy, Ian Fitzsimmons, Katie George with the call on ESPN Radio. I mean, maybe they have a megacast too, for all I know.
Who knows?
Chase, who you got on Monday night at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta?
Ohio State 31-17, closer game in the first half. Ohio State makes a big play late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and starts to distance the gap a little bit.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Sincerely. Not just I'm rooting for Ohio State, but just for his sake. Can Lou Holtz shut up?
Yes, truly, he needs to.
What is he doing?
He's making it worse.
Like, okay, you do it one time, okay, last year.
Yeah.
And given, Ohio State's toughness wasn't questioned.
Yep.
Why are you poking the bear of a team that has been growling the entire playoff?
The hottest team in the land. Thanks,
No
Luke.
question. As soon as they ran onto the field to hell's bells against Tennessee, I knew it was game on.
Oh, and game over.
Practically. Okay. I'm picking Ohio State 31-27, and I say that.
Mm-hmm.
I say that because this Notre Dame team is different. They can play in the trenches. I know Penn State roughed them up a little bit, but they have the best defensive lineman in the country in Abdul Carter.
Yep.
But the way Notre Dame can run the football with Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard, and the way they can get after you defensively, I think this game is going to be very, very close. But I'm going to take Ohio State 31-27, and a late defensive stand by the Buckeyes will win them the national championship. And just maybe, I think maybe more than just maybe. I actually do think just more than just maybe. More than just maybe. Ryan Day will be forgiven. Because you win a national championship. You win a national championship beating the teams you beat over this 4-game stretch. You will get some recognition and some credit.
Easily.
Absolutely will. And you got to feel so happy for a guy. I mean, I'm sure you watching the Cotton Bowl last week, semifinal. I'm sure had flashbacks to the Hubbard Yard Dash watching Jack Sawyer run through the heart of Texas. Okay, so that's the national championship. Bearcats men's basketball got off the schneid in Big 12 play, got a win on Wednesday night. Chase, I think we're feeling a little better about them after Wednesday night. You go on the road, you take care of business. Can we get a dang winning streak in the Big 12?
Yeah. Well, you know what? The best time to start a win streak's the next game after winning one, so might as well do it Saturday. Yeah. So hopefully they get the ball rolling and get a win against Arizona State.
Arizona State, 2 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. And here's something else real quick. And your good friend, my good friend, our good friend, Ethan Herzog, he tweeted something to me because I tweeted this Wednesday night during the game. We recorded this Thursday night, so Wednesday night being last night.
Yep.
I tweeted, why is this game on ESPN Plus? Look at all the other Power 4 conferences. Big Ten's got their own network. SEC has their own network. ACC has their own network. And Ethan is very right. ESPN Plus has given a lot of people a lot of opportunities. You, me, him. I get that, and I will never refute that. But at some point, you're in a Power 4 conference. Why was Cincinnati, Kansas on ESPN Plus?
How I'm going to say it is, you're a big conference. You need a network. I'll put it at that.
We'll start it. In addition to doing this podcast, we'll start it.
It's on to work.
I think it could do very well.
Oh, 100% it could. They need a network. That's all I'm going to put it at. Yes. I don't want to. They just need a network. Okay, that's all.
We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
It's all off air.
I do believe Cincinnati wins on Saturday against Arizona State. Arizona State, they're 1-4-2 in Big 12 play. They're interesting. They're well coached. Bobby Hurley's a really good head coach. I mean, he was a tremendous player at Duke. You and I both know that. Big game on Saturday in college basketball, though. How about this, Chase? Number 8 Kentucky hosting number 4 Alabama.
Man,
you want to talk about points and track meets? You're getting both of those on Saturday in Lexington. I guarantee you that.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. Going to be a great basketball.
It's a noon tip-off, too. So,
Yep.
Yeah, we're in for something. All right, we have gone about 84-plus minutes. This is like a soccer match at this point.
Yeah.
Talk about bundling football with football. So, bundle is life. Anyway. Chase, we've got 4 great games this weekend. We'll be back on. I say we'll be back Monday, but we got a little something on Monday going on.
That is true.
Unless we do it before Monday or Tuesday. We'll be back to recap all 4 games this week, including Rams Eagles, the last Sunday Night Football on NBC broadcast. It's hard to believe. A tremendous season for them, and then we turn the page on that to the 20th season. of Sunday Night Football on NBC. That is going to be just an awesome celebration.
Looking forward to it.
I am, me too. East Chase Younts at YountsChase32 on Twitter. Co-host of the Cut to the Chase podcast. I'm Alex Frank, sometimes referred to by my stage name, Frankie. I'm on Twitter at Frankie_Natty. Thank you for listening to the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night podcast. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Have a great MLK holiday. If you're going out, please stay safe, not only in terms of driving sober, but the roads aren't very good. The weather's going to be – it's going to be brutal. Have you seen the weather for Monday yet?
Yeah, it's not looking good.
Yeah, no. In terms of that and just in general, I mean, take care of yourself. Be healthy so you can wait all day for Sunday night, or in this case, Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and just enjoy the NFL playoffs. Like this time of year, and then you roll right into March Madness, and then the spring is underrated, Chase. Like, you got the NBA playoffs, you got the Stanley Cup playoffs, you've got baseball starting, you have the Masters, you have the PGA Championship. I mean, I could go on, but
yeah, it's
you get
great.
the point. This has been a great show. It truly is. Chase is always fantastic. I like to think my memory is as good as his, but we'll get there. This has been the Waitin' All Day for Sunday Night podcast. He's Chase Younts. I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you early next week on the Waitin' All Day for Sunday Night podcast.